Now let's take a look at the section of the unit planner for inquiry questions. It's first really understand that the inquiry questions are not supposed to be content based. The purpose of these questions is to unpack the statement of inquiry. Questions that you might have about content are going to go in the content box of the action section of the planner, and I will show you that in just a moment. First of all, there are different types of inquiry questions. We have factual questions that usually start with a who or a what, conceptual questions that usually start with how or why, and debatable questions that usually start with is, should, or to what extent. Now, let's take a look at my statement of inquiry again. Imagining a hopeful future can cause changes in power. We're going to talk about the inquiry questions that are going to go on this part of the planner right now. That's what you're focusing on. If you have questions that you come up with questions that would kind of be content oriented, you can go ahead and put them in here in the content section under the action box. So let's take a look at some examples for my statement of inquiry. Imagining a hopeful future can cause changes in power. For my inquiry questions, please notice how it correlates directly to the statement of inquiry. For factual, I might have what is a hopeful future or what causes changes in power. Conceptual questions, why does hope cause changes in power or how does hope cause changes in power? And debatable, is power important? So thinking about that. So if you look, I also have some corresponding action section questions just so you can kind of get a feel. What caused the American Civil Rights movement? How did the civil rights movement make changes in the lives of Americans? And the debatable, to what extent has the U.S. made progress with civil rights? So thinking in those terms, you see how they are more content oriented, they would go in the other box. One of the things I love about inquiry questions is how you can kind of build an interest and build excitement for your unit. So taking an example, this is something I do a lot when I introduce a unit to students. I might give them one of the factual questions to discuss. So for this one, what is a hopeful future? Have them talk about what are their hopes for their future and have them brainstorm and talk in a group. The next thing I might do is give them, and I like to use different colors of sticky notes for each group, and I would give them one of the conceptual questions. How does hope cause change? And I would ask them to think of examples of where people were hopeful about their future and instigated change. So I would have them write one example per sticky note, and then we would kind of chart them, see which group came up with the most. That's just something I like to do with my students. It gets them really motivated to be excited. And one of the things I like about this is it starts to put the conceptual understandings and the context of the unit into terms that students can relate to. You may have a student talk about Martin Luther King and that conceptual question, give that example of him hoping for a better future is what inspired him for his movement. But I really like getting them to jog and sort of put their own perspective, kind of tapping into their prior knowledge and understanding to help them make that conceptual connection to the content of the unit. And I usually do this without introducing the content of the unit. And then after this part, then I tell them what we're going to be studying and put it in that context. Another thing I might do with them is for a reflection assignment, just assign them the debatable question and have them write about it in a journal or learning log, whatever you keep. I kept an interactive notebook with my students. So it was just a way to kind of get them interested and pique their interest, tap into their prior learning before the unit, get them in the right mindset for starting the unit. That's what inquiry questions are all about. Thank you.